Today we're going to talk about applying the distributive property to area. So again, we're using the distributive property and we're applying it to area. So we're going to look at some rectangles and we're going to figure out how could we apply the distributive property to find the area of a rectangle. So remember that area is length times width, and that gives us the area. And then it says there are two different ways that we can find the area of these rectangles that we're showing, okay? The first way is we can calculate the area by looking at it as a one big rectangle, okay? So you'll see that they're broken down, but we could look at it as one giant rectangle, or the second way is we could look at it as two smaller rectangles, okay? So we're going to show it both ways. So the first way that we could show it is with one big rectangle, okay? Now keep in mind that this is our length and this is our width, okay? So if we're going to look at it as one big rectangle, my length is 3 and my width are these two numbers added together, okay? So we can put a plus sign in there. So it's my length times my width of 4 plus 1. Now, that's one way we could look at it. And we know that 4 plus 1 equals 5. And 3 times 5 is 15. So that's one way we could do it. The other way we could do it is to look at it as two separate rectangles. So we could do that by looking at this rectangle and doing 3 times 1 plus this rectangle, which would be 4 times 3. So we could look at it as a rectangle of 3 times 1 plus my rectangle of 4 times 3. So if we do this, we know that 3 times 1 is 3 and 4 times 3 is 12. So together, that gives us 15. Either way you do it, your total area should be the same, no matter how you look at it. So let's take a look at this other one. Our next example is a big rectangle. We have a length of 7, and then we have a width of 5 plus 10. Now, technically, you could use the distributive property, and you could say, well, 7 times 5 is 35, and 7 times 10 is 70, and you could do it that way. Or you could say, if I add these together, that gives me 15, and then do 7 times 15. These two things mean the same thing, but we would want to see it like this first. So then if I were to find the area using one giant rectangle, that would give me 105. If I wanted to look at it as two small rectangles, my first rectangle would be this one right here. And this rectangle is 7 times 5. So I think sometimes it helps to write it in there. And then if I want to look at my next rectangle, this rectangle, because remember, our length is the same over here, so this is also a 7. So this rectangle is going to be a 7 times 10. And we can add those together. So we can do 7 times 5 plus 7 times 10. And 7 times 5 is 35, and 7 times 10 is 70. And together we get an area of 105. Okay, I want you guys to pause the video and just kind of get an idea, what do you think this would look like? You can jot some ideas down, and then once you have some ideas of what it would look like, go ahead and restart the video. Okay, so if I'm going to look at it as one big rectangle, I know that my length is 3, and I'm going to multiply that by my width added together. So this rectangle plus this rectangle. So that's what goes on the inside. Now this one, notice we have a variable. So I can't just give a one number answer. So this one is really going to make us do the distributive property. So I'm going to have to distribute that 3 to my x, which is the same thing as 1x. 3 times x is 3x. And then I'm going to distribute that 3 over here to my 2. And 3 times 2 is 6. So the area of this giant rectangle is just going to be 3x plus 6. I can't condense it right now because these are not like terms. Now if I want to look at it as two smaller rectangles, I could use this rectangle first. And this is going to be 3 times x. And then I could use this other rectangle. And remember, the length is still the same. This is still 3 over here. So this would be 3 times 2. So my two rectangles, my first rectangle is going to be a 3 times x plus, because remember, we're adding those two together, a 3 times 2. And 3 times x gives me 3x. And 3 times 2 gives me 6. So notice, on every one of these, doesn't matter which way I do it, I should get the same total area because we're talking about the same total amount of size. So it says, look at those again. Do you see the distributive property? And I showed you along the way how we can use that distributive property to help us. So again, I find it easier if you try to if you have some colors, you can break them up, making sure that I'm writing the things on the inside. And then make sure that you are noticing that this would be an answer and then my total. And these two things added together would be an answer with my total. So notice the two different ways that I wrote them on each of them, but we still got the same total. So when you go ahead and answer them, I'm going to want to see it looking like your length on the outside and then your width added on the inside. And then I'm going to want to see them broken up like they were two little rectangles. Okay, thank you.